Go.
Good morning. This is a called Finance Committee meeting of Forsyth County.
This conference will now be recorded.
The members of the Finance Committee are Commissioners Cooper, Brown, Mills, CFO Dave Gruen, and County Manager Eric Johnson. And we're going to continue on from the discussion on Monday. Dave, if you can kind of talk about who we have queued up this morning, and we know that we need to have a hard stop at 11:30 this morning.
Okay. What we have left on our agenda for the track one budgets to review are the probate court. Then we have 3 areas of public safety, ambulance, EMA, and the public safety radio system, a little bit of E911. Left remaining from judicial area, we have indigent defense. And then we have primarily after that, we have what we call general government, which is all of our internal functions plus tax assessor and voters registration. And then we pull up the end with the fire fund at the very end of this. And with that, segueing over to the schedule, as it's set up right now, what we had carved out in committee members' calendars was the next meeting would be on May 26th, the next Tuesday, from 9 to potentially 11 o'clock, before I think one member has a conflict after that. And then on Thursday, the 28th, from 9 o'clock on until as long as the committee can do it, or up to as late as it's all clear all the way up to 1 o'clock, and that on the 28th. So I think we have probably a couple between today and those 2 days, probably a good opportunity to get through all these budgets.
Okay. All right. With that, do you want to kick off the probate court discussion? And
all right, that's a page on the package. It's page 168 for the summary. And let everyone get there. I've got it in front of me. There, to start off with, there's no new items requested. And the summary, and I'll address both sides of the budget a little bit. On the expenditure side, it is only for just under $1.5 million budget. It's a 0.3% increase of about just under $5,000, and that's primarily from salaries and benefits area, netting against an operating expense decline of 10%. But up on the revenue side, and there are significant revenues that come through this court. Based on historic collections last year, we've backed off of the revenue budget a bit, and this could change as we see how we go through this year by the time we adopt the budget. But if there's anything that would be hard to predict, we think the three of the main revenues come from marriage licenses, gun permits, and passports. If anyone has a handle on what they'll look like next year in activity, I'd be impressed if they could predict that very close. And Judge can tell you how that varies up and down with different economics and events and everything else and growth in general. But those are the 3 of the 4 main drivers of the revenues, is those 3 permit or license areas. And with that, turn it over to the judge and what he would like to add about the budget.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
yes, sir.
Hold on just a second. Let me turn something off here. All right, that probably worked better. The marriage license, that's going to be the same. They just postponed things a bit. I think the June weddings are starting back up. We had an influx of them at the end of last week, and it'll start this week, the same thing. So that is occurring, and that will be about the same. The passports, those are the unpredictable part, because that depends upon the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State. And right now they are not doing anything at all except for emergencies, and they have a very restrictive definition on emergencies. Weapons carry, that's going to be the same. That was just postponed, and folks have 120 days now pursuant to a executive order from the governor to get their renewals in. we've had lots of inquiries on those. Those have started back up. So those will run into what would have had to occur in February, March, and April, and this month, May. Those will run into September and October. So those will be the same. There won't be any decline there. The only unknown, as I said, would be the passports, and that depends upon the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State. So we'll just have to wait and see. So that's what's happening with the revenue. And of course, everything else will be pretty steady.
Good morning, Commissioner Mills.
I guess she's still working, trying to get, there she is.
I had to do the phone thing. Can you hear me?
We
Okay.
can. Good morning.
Good morning.
So at this point, we're hearing that the revenues are anticipated to be comparable to what you anticipated or what David anticipated, and with the exception of passport, whenever that might come back. And we've got 7 months to see what happens between now and the beginning of next fiscal year.
That's correct.
Any comments, observations on the expenditures, or
I do on the expenditures. I just found it's interesting. Your part-time salaries went way down, and so did the bailiff wages and fees. I mean, that was a big drop.
You're talking about on expenditures that were put into the budget?
Yes.
We hadn't used all the bailiff fees in the past, so that's not going to impact our operations at all. I think probably we did not initiate that reduction. I think the county budget office did. And is that the case, Ms. Sharp, that we were just high on what we had been expending on the bailiffs?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Your part-time salaries also went down quite a bit.
The part-time, yeah, we, I think, didn't we convert to a full-time position? That's what we did. We converted a part-time position to full-time, and that's why the part-time went down.
Yeah, I think there was
Thank
also
you.
some funding there for a part-time budget that was not needed as much as anticipated.
That's correct. Other than that, expenditure is about the same.
Bottom line. Thank you.
any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us today and accommodating the shift in our schedule.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Thank you. Sorry I was late.
All right, Dave, next.
Next on the agenda, going back to the public safety 100, while people page,
What page
flip back
number?
up to
100.
Dave, you're fading out.
explanation here. I mean, okay, can you,
Turn off your camera.
yeah, I did. So now, hopefully, my power can build, uh-oh. Can you still hear me? My connection just went down.
Actually, we can hear you better now.
Oh. Can you? Okay, it says my connection's down. Let's see how long I last. If not, I'll check. I'm trying to keep reconnecting. Anyway, ambulance service is a contracted service, and so
You're gone now.
Dave, you might need to call in.
that goes up by contract
Dave,
by
Dave, we
3%
can't
per
really.
year until the contract is renewed. In line for her budget. I don't know, Don, if you want to add anything.
Dave, you're fading in and out. You want to try to call in?
Yeah, I'll try to call in. Okay.
Call on your phone.
While we're waiting on Dave, I'll just tell you that the governor's call was very nice. It was, but we really didn't find out a whole lot more than what we know. Most of it is we're early on in the process. It's not, he did say he didn't think it was as bad as they had first anticipated. But that, and education and the thing, public safety and those things are going to take precedence over other things. But that, I mean, the question was asked, we're in the middle of budgeting. I mean, how do we know what to budget without y'all? And it was just, stay tuned. They're working on that CARES Act, and they're, right now, the one thing he did say, Eric, and this can be passed on to everybody, but that records are going to be vitally important in able to get some of the money recouped back to counties, but that it had a lot of strings attached to it. And the CARES Act, they're trying to get it broadened so it can go to more things than just COVID, you know, a direct connection. And that if we can talk to our federal government people, our, you know, congressmen, that try to get them to change. He said that be expecting on every penny you get to be audited on it. So make sure that you've got all your records in place.
Okay,
Hey,
I'm on.
Grant?
Can you hear me?
Talk a little bit
I
more,
can hear
Dave.
you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on the phone connection, so I'll just stay on there, even though that I got reconnected to the other as well. Okay, ambulance service, page 100. Again, this is a contracted service, and then built into the contract is a 3% increase each year until the contract is renewed. So you'll see that there in that page, that increase. And again, I was going to say, Donna in procurement manages this contract, and she's online for her budget to come up. If you have any questions, she could probably add to that as far as, I don't know if Donna's gotten any other requests from Central or not for this year, because sometimes they come in with midterm requests depending on cost and volume and activity.
Well, we had one where they were asking us to pay them some extra money because of tough times, and we slow walked that. And as far as I know, they stopped asking us about that. Donna, are you on?
I am, Eric. This is Donna. I agree. They have not asked anymore, and I really haven't offered anymore either. So we're still at the contracted amount as David shows.
Yeah, they were losing money from. I mean, our transports were down, but they were losing money from other areas within their ability to provide service and bill, and I think they were, in my mind, trying to take advantage of the situation, and fortunately they stopped asking. So,
Well, and you know, those are things to note when it comes to contract renewal too.
I
I mean,
agree.
everybody's going through a hard time. I mean, it's not like that the county has a bottomless bucket.
And they were less than 30 days in and already asking us to give them more money. So, and Central is part of a national, much larger national corporation. So they should plan for these types of possibilities just like everyone else. So thanks, Donna.
You're welcome.
Any questions on this? Okay. Dave, you
No,
wanna
but
move
the
on?
3% was it anticipated? Is that what's normal?
That was
That's
in
in
the
the con-
contract, Commissioner Mills.
Right.
Okay, good. I figured it was.
Okay. All right.
Okay, next.
next on the agenda is emergency management. I think Chris is on the line. Just a brief summary. Slip down to page 104 is where the summary is, followed by the detail pages. This is not as comparable for 2019 because I think in mid-year that function was moved over to the general fund out of the fire district. But there is a full current year budget to compare to. Now, to make a good comparison, there was $150,000 in the current 2020 budget for additional sirens, and that makes, when you take that out and we did not add any new items into the 2021 budget, that makes it appear that the budget has dropped. It's really about the same. If you take the 150 off, it's 329,000 each year, almost no change. But up in the summary, in the new items, they're requesting, according to the plan, the next funding for 150,000 for the next 5 outdoor sirens. However, I think both, maybe Eric and Chris can comment on that because of the timing of getting this year's in. That may be pushed out, I believe. So with that, I'll let Chris and Eric address this budget.
Chris?
Put your mic on, Chris. But it looks like it's off. Here you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can. What you been doing the last few weeks? Never heard about anything from you.
I know. We like Dave said, in 2020 we had planned on adding 5 additional outdoor warning sirens. Most people know those as tornado sirens, we are looking at whether we need to continue those for 2020 with the county manager, and we were going to wait maybe and see budget impacts because that is $150,000. We've tentatively put that in for 5 additional ones in for 2021 once we see where the impacts to the budget are going to be.
Hey, Chris, this is Cindy. I've got a question either for you or for Dave. I know that you get the 911 fees, and they can be used for capital purchases, correct?
It can be if it's not, but there are specific capital purchases that it has to be. Like they have to impact the 911 center or communications to the 911 center. So they still have to go back to the 911. They have to be tied back to the 911 center.
But those
I'll talk about that when I plan on talking about that a little bit when we get to the next budget, when we get to the radio system budget, to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. I just think that we need to, especially during these hard times, if there's any way we can move and use those fees to help us with our general budget, it would be real beneficial right now for sure.
Well, and on that, I agree, Commissioner. On that issue, next Tuesday, you're going to have a discussion about, I think, buying some equipment for the 911 center, and we're buying another dispatch module out of not module, but the what's the setup called?
Console, no console.
A console out of public safety impact fees, and that's been our question to the city of Cumming, that they want us to spend impact fees within city limits, but we don't have a separate dispatch council within city limits. We have it in our public safety, public services center. So the challenge is you have one location, you've got towers in specific locations, and new growth impacts the need for more dispatches, and we really could use the city collecting the money without trying to question us on why we aren't spending it within the city of Cumming. And I think there's also a letter related to impact fees that was added to your agenda for Tuesday, so you may get into some of that. But on the weather sirens, we had a map that I think Finance had popped up that looked at kind of population centers and where people gather. And so the question really there is, it's a one-time expenditure and it's an easy thing that you can move around based on when money is more available. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about what the different color circles mean?
Yes, so the red circles are our current sirens. The circles with a black and yellow, or it looks probably just black on your screen, those were sirens that we had planned on doing this year. And the ones with the green circles, we had looked at doing next year in 2021. So those triangles with the black circles, those are the locations of those are Fowler Park, South Forsyth High School, Kelly Mill Elementary, the right-of-way just outside of Baldridge Campground on the lake, and Bennett Park. Then the 2021 sirens that we were looking at is Johns Creek Elementary, Vickery Creek Middle School, both sides of Sawney Mountain to cover the mountain and people on the trail. And the right-of-way, this is probably our first one we'll do, but somewhere along county right-of-way on Buford Dam Road as you approach the lake. So we can cover the campgrounds, the parks, day use parks, all that near the lake and some other outdoor areas. So what we're trying to do, as you know, we have 17 sirens in the county now. What we're trying to do is go back and look at where we have population centers or where we know there's large gatherings of people and that are not covered. So, for instance, I'll use Fowler Park, the backside of Fowler Park, where the tennis courts are. It really does not get anything as big as Fowler Park is. The front side of it gets just a little bit of audio from Midway Elementary. But then you get over we chose South Forsyth High School because the high school doesn't have anything, nor does it nothing covers the collection. So what we're really trying to do is go back and strategically put these in specific places where we know that there's large groups of people that gather.
So it's not based on where people live, it's where people gather.
That's right, because as you know, and as I always remind folks, sirens are designed to be heard outdoors. A lot of people think they should be heard inside their home. They are not designed to be heard inside a home. They're designed to be heard outdoors and to push people into a structure, into a safe place.
Can you move the map up a little bit so north or south you can see it at all? So you don't think one's needed at Lanier Land?
That is in our, that would be, so in this map only shows 2020 and 2021. I have one that shows 2022, and Lanier Land is in that one.
And Matt Park?
And we basically grow about 5 every year for the next 3 years, and then after that, after 2022, then I would look at doing one, we would then go kind of on a 1 or 2 sirens and see where we need to add it at that point. So now Matt Park has one near, there is a siren at Liberty Middle School, Matt Elementary, excuse me. It's right there on Wall Statham Road at the entrance of Matt Elementary.
Okay.
So Chris, I talked about the city not collecting our impact fees, but we worked with the city last year on replacing a siren within the city and then tying it into our system. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've talked to the city about doing that. Where we ran into a little snag is their siren currently on top of their water tower. That does not, that one there is not, we can't replace a siren on top of the water tower. We can't replace it one for one. So we're working with the city to find a location. We were working and then COVID hit. And so we are getting ready to pick that project back up with them. We were looking to try to put it in the same location. But as you can imagine, around a water tower, these poles have to go pretty good ways down into the ground. We were concerned about hitting underground utilities, so we're working with them to, on a new location for that.
And that would be tied into our dispatch as opposed to how they've done it in
Correct.
the past?
Correct. There's now, their old one is what is set off at the city police department, and it's only controlled that one. And so any new one that would be put in the city would be tied into our system here as well.
So they'd all go off simultaneously as opposed to waiting for someone at the city to turn theirs on at the police headquarters.
Correct. And when they had a dispatcher there, at one point, as you may remember, the city had somebody that served as a dispatcher for them, but they, I think it's been about 18 months ago, we took on their dispatching up at the 911 center, so they no longer have somebody there 24/7 like they used to.
Okay, thanks. So my point is just we're trying to work with the city to have a consistent ability to let people know countywide. It's a countywide function. Any other questions for Chris? Okay.
How much money is in the 911 fund? Just curious.
I'm trying to remember right offhand. I'll have to get the number for you. It's still a pretty healthy fund. I have to look at it. I'm thinking it's still at least 400,000 or 500,000, but that might be low. It might be a lot more than that. But it did. The income in that is increased with adding certain of the phone charges to the wireless phones, and so that their 911 charges have been covering their expenses. So that fund is in very good shape.
You want to turn
Yeah,
to that department?
If you could get how much was in it. I mean, we don't want to deplete it. We want it to be able to be used for, of course, its intended purpose. But if there's a way we can maximize and be able to help, it is a resource.
Right. Now, we'll certainly look at that. Those fees, as I'll explain a little bit here in a moment, are very specific on what you can and cannot use them for. We actually turn in a report every year to the state to show exactly what they were spent on. So, and they go over that very carefully. But I agree. We'll look for anything there that can be covered by those fees.
I just know Deborah Nesbitt went over this. Deborah Nesbitt went over this with the Board of Managers or with something with ACCG one time and said that, you know, you should be careful. It can go to more things than lots of times your staff or whatever think it can. You know, that it could be used for different things that when they wrote it, when they redid it, the new, so it could be used for different things.
Okay.
Dave, you want to go ahead and move to 911?
Well, yeah, I will say on the 911, this is not, when we look at 911 here, and Dave can probably, this is not the full 911 center budget. This is only going to look at the radio system. The 911 center budget is actually in track 2 because it is a, Dave, you can probably explain that better than I can, but it's because of the way the funds are collected.
Right. Moving to page 107, this is primarily the public safety radio system. In fact, I think we're going to probably divide this out separately somewhere else. Why it started out as E911 is there are a few expenses over the years that the 911 fees are not allowed to cover, and those expenses were put here as a few of the smaller operating account lines. But then over time, the radio system cost was brought into this cost center here, and that's what primarily shares the radio system. But as Chris said, since it's a separate fund, the 911 fees, that is not connected to the general fund in any way or to taxes, that's in the second track of budget, so it'll come later in June and beyond. But right here is primarily the public safety radio system. And these are just the centralized costs. Well, let me go to the summary first of all. On page 107, There's actually a decrease in the operating expenses, which causes a 7% decrease in this overall budget, and there's no new items requested. The decrease has to do with some of the costs. I think we were able to move out to some of the other users. Now, as far as who the system is used by, is the sheriff's office, the primary users, public safety, fire, and then 911 along with them, as well as now, see, Chris, was that last year, the school board came into this so that they're running their bus radio system off our towers, and they give a large contribution to their share of the costs for the system. All those other costs, and the annual charge for Motorola is rather large every year, and that's divided up among the users by their number of radios. So the sheriff's budget has a large charge in it, fire has a charge into it, and some other departments are on this too. Some of our other user departments like road and bridge out in the field and so on. Water, I think, has a few radios on our system. So all the users are paying for their direct annual cost that goes to cover the Motorola contract. Right here, we have one staff, one employee, and the cost for running the central system. I think some of the utilities for the towers and so on are centered here. Beyond that, Chris, anything else to add to help our understanding of what's in this budget?
Yes, I will say this is not reflected in here, but one project that we have had on the books for quite a while, I guess it would be the best way in our plan, is a new tower site out on Old Federal Road. As you know, population continues to grow. The plan there had been to pay for that with impact fees. And Commissioner Mills, to your point, 911 fees can pay for communications equipment, communications towers. And so that is where, because what we have seen is impact fees being down, the collection not being where we expected them to be, that we would likely go in to use that 911 fund for those expenses. And that, because that tower is needed, a new tower is about $1.5 million. So, but for all the equipment, all the work, all the engineering, I mean, you're putting up a whole tower. And so we would be looking to use those 911 fees for that. So that would be a very large drawdown on those fees.
Thank you. I know it's very much needed.
Any other questions on the E911 radio system? Okay, thanks, Chris.
And Commissioner Mills, to your point earlier about the documentation, just to so you know, the Finance Committee knows, I think it's we've been working already for several weeks on tracking our expenses on the FEMA. We've already had several conference calls with FEMA about our expenses and that process, and probably sometime the 1st of June, we'll be bringing some documentation to the board.
Thank you, Chris. You do a great job.
Okay, Dave, what's next?
All right. What's next is, well, what we'll spend time in is Indigent Defense Office back under judicial on page 154. What we had showing on the agenda before that was something that got separated actually from the clerk of court on page 143. At least mention it in the way by. It's a small budget. This is for the Board of Equalization, which relates to the tax assessor values, property appraiser. And it's a small budget of about $40,000. This is a board that is appointed and it is managed by the clerk of court. So normally we should have paired that with him when he was here for his budget. But it's $40,000. It's a required board, and more than half of that is the fees that get paid to that board. But I want at least mention that just so wonder what happened to it or why it's on the agenda. That was page 143. But if there's no questions on that,
Dave?
moving.
So,
yes.
Dave, well, just
yes.
Because the salaries have gone up, is there a specific reason why that we should know?
No, that's about it. If we have a specific question, I can go back to the clerk and get a more direct answer, but that's, yeah, that went up
Did
to
there-
5,000.
I just wondered, did they get an increase in what they get paid, or did they hire, I mean, they had to train more people?
Yeah, that I don't know. I have to go back to Greg and ask him that.
It's
I
it's a
I
small
thought the
dollar
fee
amount,
went
but
up.
it's a 25% increase.
Right. Yeah, I thought the fees went up, but I have to confirm that with Greg.
Okay.
But anyway, what's there is what's needed to run that board. All right, page 154 is the summary for indigent defense. I'll give a brief introduction here. For those that may be attending that aren't familiar with this, in place of having a public defender, we're one of what's called the opt-out counties, where we have an office under the board that interviews people to qualify them, the defendants, and then different attorneys from a pool under what's called the tripartite committee of attorneys, defense attorneys that oversees their work, are assigned to various cases as the need arises from the defendants that are qualified by Connie's office. With that said, it's a large budget for those fees for defender's office, and it's just over, including some staff, over $1.5 million now, showing a 10% increase for next year. What has changed, though, you can see, is the operating expenses significantly up 13%. A couple of years ago, we were able to drop this budget by $200,000, and then the tripartite committee recommended increases to the fees, which Connie can speak to some more, and we finally saw the impact of that last year, which brought those costs back up again, and now this budget is catching up with that cost increase for the court-appointed attorneys. That being said, the one new item here, which is going to get a little involved because it involves the courts, and I'll let Connie address it. There was a request, actually through the courts, but Connie knew that they were looking for this and put it into this budget, to have an accountability court defense attorney brought on as an employee of the county to serve the accountability courts. And that's a little bit of a different model. We're struggling with where that would fit in as a county employee. With that, Connie, let you take it from there.
Okay. The judges had requested, because the accountability courts are such a specialized court system, you know, because they're dealing with the felony drug cases, the misdemeanor DUI cases, and then our mental health cases, which we have in our care court. So there really needs to be an attorney who is specialized in those courts to handle, instead of us now just having 2 or 3 attorneys handling those. The courts would like to have one attorney assigned to be our accountability defense attorney. Originally, they had requested that it go under my budget, and but since I am not an attorney, I cannot supervise an attorney. The courts were looking at it, and I don't know if they have had it in their budget or not, but they were looking at requesting that to be a standalone area where the attorney would be in their own department of an accountability courts. So that's all that I know about that. I don't know what the judges or the courts had talked to the commissioners about in their budget. So that's all I know about that. But also wanted to let y'all know, is Commissioner Mills, you were in the meeting with the governor this morning. I get a significant, a couple $100,000 from the state every year. And earlier this year, the governor had asked all of his agencies to cut 4%, which means that the funding that I got was cut 4%. I've been talking with the Georgia Public Standards Council, who is over the public defender's office, who provides that money to us. And the governor, I think, is what they're hearing is the governor is looking at least another 10% cut. Now, I don't know, Commissioner Mills, you said they're still looking at it this morning. But so I'm anticipating that I will take another cut on the state funding that I get. But I do have a couple of other revenue items where individuals pay application fees that are by the state requires. And then also individuals who are placed on probation reimburse the county back for their attorney fees as part of their probation. So I'd still have a couple of revenue items that are still available, but just not quite sure how the funding that I get from the state is going to be impacted.
Yeah, it's scary when you hear 4% one thing, 14% another.
Correct.
I mean, it becomes scary with what is. I didn't get to ask the question, but I wanted to say, you know, as far as judicial goes, we're behind. Everything's backed up, and if you cut that 14% and people are furloughed, then how are we ever going to get caught up? You know, I'm scared of the unfunded mandates that are going to come to us that we're not going to account for. That did get asked, and he was just very non-committal because he said it's still too early on and that they're still looking at the number. It sounded sort of like what Dave said to us, you know, with the way things are delayed coming in, you don't know the impacts until you get a little farther down the road. They did keep talking about the Texas model and on the CARES Act and on the different things, and that they were looking to, and ACCG was pushing them to use the Texas model. So if y'all want to look up the Texas model, that might be what we're going to get. But they said it was a very simplistic approach that they think seems to work. But that's more of funneling money through to counties. But they also said that they didn't know how restrictive, unless the strings are loosened from DC, there's not a lot of funds that can be, you know, sent on to the counties unless it's COVID related.
Hey, maybe a question for you. So Connie talked about the cut in revenue. Back on that summary sheet, there's an intergovernmental revenue line that for next year is 210,000. Is that what we're talking about, a 4% or 14% cut to?
Well, that's the line. That's what we originally budgeted. You're right. We have to take 4% off of that. Although, Connie, in the actual for 2019, didn't they start backing off of that already anyway?
No, it came in after that.
Okay.
I think I got notified of it in like
I'm just trying to get a context. A 14% cut in revenue of $210,000 would be like
So
28,000.
Right. Yeah, just about 30,000. Or take it off of last year's actual of 207,261.
I think the challenge to the state is if they need 14% and they start excluding public safety and education, then they need a bigger bite at the apple in other areas. So,
well, these fees, you know, we're mandated, you know, to provide legal representation. So they can't cut it too much.
unless
that's the money we get.
I'm sorry.
Well, Connie, go ahead, Molly.
I just said it takes it down to 100,600, 186,000 is what it takes it down to.
So Connie, to your point, can you cut your spending just because they cut the revenue?
Unfortunately,
can you not deliver service?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
And as I was listening to the sheriff's budget yesterday, as he was talking to you about arrest and the jail and everything, I'm such an unknown because I am based on the arrests that come in, the traffic cases. The economy also does impact people's abilities to afford attorneys. I still am not getting an idea right now as to how much the economy is impacting people because the arrests have been so low right now. So it's hard for me to judge if I can even see the caseload going to be up or down for next year.
Is there data that goes back like 10 to 12 years to see what happened during the last recession?
I can check. I don't know if I have it that far back. I know I have it. I go back about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
So, but I do know that something that surprised me is when they raise, you know, when we do the financial assessments on individuals, you know, we're looking at poverty level, individuals who can't afford an attorney, and there are the federal poverty guidelines we look at. One thing that I am seeing that has impacted it is when they raised unemployment. It's up to close to $600 a week now, which is changing. You know, normally it was $300, so a lot of people would qualify, but now that it's up to $600 a week, that's changing our, you know, how many people are qualifying this day.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Connie, and let us know as you hear more.
Definitely will. I'll keep you updated.
One question, Connie. So if your court cases are delayed, will you have any money maybe left over that you're not using now? You know what I'm saying? Like the deferred, that might help in any way?
Yes, Commissioner Mills, because the court cases are being delayed right now, and we're still not quite sure when the court system is going to get back on full swing again. That is definitely going to delay the payments that the attorneys are charging. So there definitely will be some delay. There may possibly will be some monies. I'm anticipating there'll be monies available after this year, because I don't see the court doing that.
And just talking to a local attorney that had done some work for me, he said that for the month of March, say, and maybe it was April too, that his income was down 70% in his law firm. You know, and that just, I would think that maybe not to that degree, but it would translate into some of your attorneys as well.
That is definitely true. My expenditures for the past 2 to 3 months are probably about 60 to 65% less than what they normally would be if the court system was up functioning fully.
Okay.
And I know right now there's no jury trials have not been given, you know, the no jury trials are grand jury. They've not been decided when they're going to start those back. So if it's later on in the year, it definitely will leave my budget with some extra funding.
So you're getting revenue regardless of whether you're incurring costs?
From the state, yes. And
So
from application fees, yes.
So it's kind of the opposite of what you'll see next year. So you're getting revenue even though you're not incurring costs this year. July starts a new state fiscal year. You could have your revenue down starting in July, but your costs come back as courts start to be in session and you start to incur those costs again.
Correct.
Okay. So maybe some of that loss of revenue next year could be mitigated by lower costs this year.
Well, I guess just total dollars, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Dave, who's next? Thank you, Connie.
You're welcome.
Well, now we're ready to move on to the general government section and start working our way through there. It begins with summary for the administration budget on page 181, and then from there the pages will go back in very close order.
So let me just ask at the beginning, Commissioner Cooper, you suggested that we stop at this point. Are you still interested in stopping? Do you want to move on? What's your pleasure?
But we get feedback from other folks. I just thought, since this is sort of the same area here, all these different categories are from the same area, that might be something we would like to cover in one day and just have that a day. What do other folks think?
Yeah, that would be good with me too, Molly. That way it kind of keeps it categorized. If it wouldn't inconvenience anybody that's already on.
Yeah,
Well,
this way, if it's not an inconvenience to others.
Now, they're all categorized as general government, but there's a lot of unrelated items here. I mean, it's up to the committee what you want to do, but you know, we have, unless you want to pull a few out, we have a tax assessor here, we have voter registration, and then we have a variety of internal services like procurement and communications and finance and so on.
What is as a compromise if we considered the tax assessor and voter registration? They're a little unique in terms of the reporting relationship, and they're both on.
Okay, sure.
And then we'll bring the departments that are more direct reports to me back at our next meeting.
Okay, that's good.
And with that, we can let all those people that I see that are on the call that are not related to Mandy or Mary that can go ahead and stay on if you like, or get off, and we'll bring you back at the next meeting. Okay, Dave.
All right, well, then we can jump down to page 218. 218 is the tax assessor. Let me get there. Ah, right there, okay. Tax assessor's budget, there is a request for, and both these budgets we're considering have requests for new items, so it's a good time to talk about them. What's requested here is one full-time additional property appraiser.
Dave,
and
do you want
four-
to talk
and
about the
help-
underlying budget maybe first?
And I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Yeah, the summary of the budget and the expenditure side is up 3.35%. And that's primarily from the salaries and benefits. As if you look above there, the operating expenses are down 1.6%. There's no revenues assigned here. And overall, that budget is 37 positions. And then with that, there's a request for one additional appraiser. However, Mary had suggested cutting 4 part-time positions that were not working out as well as she had hoped when she originally had added them to the budget. If those 4 are cut, that would offset the cost of this additional full-time position. And with that, is Mary Kirkpatrick on?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Here you are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Good morning. How you doing, Commissioner Cooper?
I am doing well. How about you?
Can't complain, can't complain. Basically, my request was to bring on one more full-time staff. I think other than that, I tried to keep everything at basic current service level without increasing too terribly much of anything. I did have 4 part-time employees that we were using to try to review the county, and that function did not work out as well as we had hoped. So we are basically going to abandon that. That will open up the money for the 4 part-times. Long-term, when I do request a full-time position, that does include the benefits that go along with that. But it has been about 5 years since we've added a position to the real estate appraisal side. So I was hoping financially the offset of those would help, and it wouldn't be completely a new position and to be required to fund a totally new position in this year's budget. But other than that, I think my budget's pretty well staying about the same as it was last year.
Mary, hey, it's Cindy. I hope you're doing good.
I am doing well. Thank you, Cindy. How you doing?
I'm okay. I am curious if we need to brace ourselves for anything like what happened last year when the commercial tax, when y'all did catch up and we just got slammed by so many because their appraisals went up astronomically.
I don't think we're going to see anything of that nature this year, but I think what you are going to see is you're going to see, we're already receiving letters from commercial property owners requesting that we roll values back because of the economy.
The business is hurting.
Yeah, because, so many people have had to either make rental concessions on these commercial properties and, help people through this COVID crisis. And it's a unique situation for us because our evaluation date is January 1. And of course, nothing was happening on January 1. And if there is an economic impact, that would probably go into effect on next year's tax digest as opposed to what we're dealing with right now. So, know what we're going to see, and I would like to be able to tell you, there is some requirement in the law that says we do have to consider actual income if we're looking at properties on an income basis, which they have dropped. I don't know how that will really impact us, but I think with the amount of Dave puts in the budget for a loss, that 3% that he calculates in, we're probably going to be within the realm of that safely. So I don't think you're going to see any major loss this year. But it
Was
is
it 4%? I thought it was 4%.
well,
Yeah,
Dave, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we used 4 and then we reduced the autos from that. So we end up at 3.69. Mary's estimate, her hallway estimate, if you were earlier in the year, was 3%. So, and she's usually pretty conservative. So we started with 4%.
But
Yeah.
Dave,
But now we have
out
now we
for
have
bad
actual
debt.
numbers. So.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think when you count that percentage in, you're accounting for what loss you're going to receive during the Board of Equalization. I know you were looking at their budget a little earlier, and I do believe that amount is always put in there to cover that loss. And I can't imagine us being above and beyond that amount of loss.
Yeah. Now that was the estimate we worked on before we got your numbers. Your latest numbers, Mary, the net M&O is actually up 4.5%.
Right. So I think we're going to be pretty good there. The residential market seems to be holding, believe it or not, firm. I've been reading several articles where actually I think because the building is kind of slowed, the resale market is doing very well. They say that there's beginning to be a shortage of available homes out there across the U.S. and that market values are on residential properties are increasing. And I know we're seeing a lot of people who are refinancing, and we're getting phone calls wanting, information for lenders on purchases. So the residential market seems to be holding its own right now. Commercial is going to be the one that I think we're going to have to watch closely.
Dave, I think what I thought you might mention is how much you reduced the total for bad debt.
Well, we budget 97% of the digest she gives us. So,
yeah.
Because historic collections normally run around 97% in the year that they are assessed. Now, eventually they're collected in following years, and those delinquent taxes and penalties are budgeted on separate accounts.
Any
other questions? Well, I'll ask one, Mary. So back to your commercial, if people have lower income on their commercial properties, that should actually impact the value next January 1, which would affect revenue in the fiscal 22 budget.
Correct.
Okay.
If we see a substantial decrease, I think that if things are opening back up, I'm hoping this is going to be a temporary glitch that, it may impact it a little bit, but I'm hoping we're not going to see a huge impact on this.
Yeah, but Mary, if I know where Eric's going, that the decrease won't show until the following year. But if I own a restaurant and my income has dropped this past year and you have that income factor in your appraisal, I'm going to come and have my attorney showing why you can't appraise this at the value you did. And I think a lot of those will have to be granted. I don't know how you cannot grant it when literally they've shut their doors at least 2 or 3 months.
Right. Well, I think that the one thing, a lot of the restaurants and type properties are generally not done on an income base. They're based on generally a cost value anyway, and the market value. Cost to replace those. Your income valuations basically are generally applied more to shopping centers, apartment complexes, medical office buildings, things along those lines, where there may be, where people who rent those have had to give concessions to folks to keep them in business and keep them alive. And it might affect some of the mom and pop restaurants or things that are in stores like that, but it doesn't affect that store owner as much as it affects the property owner who's leasing to them. So a lot of the restaurants you're going to see, I don't know how much of an argument they're going to have there, because a lot of them are based on cost and market, and as opposed to income, because generally those type buildings, a lot of those they're built to a specific floor plan or design, and they are owned. They're not generally being built to be leased out to someone. So like I said, about the ones you see there are going to be the ones located in shopping centers, and that's not going to impact the business itself that's sitting in that shopping center as much as it impacts the owner of that shopping center who's renting to those people.
Yeah, but that's that trickle down. It still comes back to the county and people trying, I mean, if they waive the rent or they waive the, lease payments, then I just think that we need to conservatively look at those numbers if it's going to hit us. I mean, we need to be cognizant of it.
Yes, and I'm not going to disagree with that at all, Cindy, because I think that in reality, like I said, we're getting these letters and these requests now, and I wished I had that crystal ball to know how much this would impact this, but I know we're going to get hit with it. I mean, I'm already having a lot of the tax representatives send letters in saying, do this and, do this for this year. And our notices, by the way, are planning to hit the mailboxes tomorrow. So, by Friday, they're going to be out there. We were done with our work and, ready to mail notices. So we will be dealing with this very much over the next month or two. So I'm going to say, yes, I do not at all blame you for looking at this with a very conservative eye.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mary. And I see Kevin is on. Thank you, Kevin, for what you've been doing.
Yes, and thank you all. I know you're facing a hard year this year and difficult times, so we appreciate everything you're doing for the county as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Y'all have a good afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, if we're ready, voters registration budget is down starts on page 233, is the summary. And I'll walk through that a little bit. I see Mandy is on the meeting.
Hello.
And this budget,
Hi,
one thing is,
Hello.
one thing to understand about this budget, of course, is it goes with election cycles. So every other year, the budget jumps well up, and then the in-between non-election year, if you will, it goes down. So you can see the 2020 budget is 1.4 million, and the 2021 budget is 755,000. So you have to recognize it's different election cycles, which makes that not very comparable at all. So with that, at the top of the page, we have some new requests. There was 4 positions requested. One is a coordinator for communications and training, and then 3 different administrative specialists that Mandy can explain the 3 different areas where she was going to appoint those administrative specialists to. And that's the summary. With that, Mandy, you want to say anything in introduction? We'll take questions.
Okay, well, good morning. Good to see everyone. Over here at the elections office. So advanced voting started on Monday, so we're rocking right along. As far as the request for the budget, so we're trying to, not so much at the department, just because there are so many voters in the county now, we are growing. Therefore, we have to kind of restructure a little bit the department to make sure that all areas are being covered and that it's not all kind of falling on one person or the other. So you have me, and then currently we have 2 coordinator positions. I have my coordinator over voter registration and absentee, which is currently filled and has been for a couple of years. And then we were approved this year for the coordinator position over the election equipment and warehouse area, which everything's kind of gotten messed up this year. But as soon as we're to the point where we can interview people, we'll be bringing on that coordinator, and they have lots to learn straight off the bat because of all the new equipment. And then my request was for a 3rd coordinator position that would be over outreach, training, and communications. So with all of the poll workers that we have, you're looking at, when it's a busy election time, 200, 300, 400 plus people that we have to find, staff, train. And so I would like to have someone that is sort of their primary function, to be the coordinator over that area. And then with those 3 coordinators, that was my request for the other positions to fall under them. We currently are an office of 6 full-time employees with 165 plus thousand registered voters. So we've continued to grow, and I would like to continue to grow us a little bit to be able to cover everything a little bit better than we're covering it right now. I mean, internally, we're taking care of everything. It's all getting done, but it's a lot of hours and a lot of work for what we do. And I know until you kind of come and been a part of it, a lot of people don't know what we do, but we're busy all the time, not just when it's election time.
Mandy, I've got a question. I've been hearing on the news a lot about long lines and people doing extended hours. Do you think there's a need for that here?
Commissioner Mills, as of this moment, I do not. I will say that that's subject to change as the days wear on. But our first 2 days of advanced voting, we had 237 people vote day 1, 240 vote yesterday. The longest time when we tested it was about a 26-minute wait to get from the side of the building into the room. And that was right around lunchtime, which is always our high traffic time anyway. And the poll workers, everyone are wearing masks. They are sanitizing prior to every voter. You know, every pen gets washed before the next voter comes in, the backs of the chairs, the front of the tables, the equipment. So, and I think that's as it should be. So I think we're doing what we need to do to ensure the safety of the voters and the poll workers that are standing there all day. But knock on wood, and I know I've heard about other counties and whatnot, but 26 minutes to wait, and you're practicing social distancing. We've got blue tape all the way around the side of the building. They've got places to stand. I think that's very reasonable. And we've had nothing but compliments from voters and just comments about the fact that they appreciated what we were doing.
That's good to know. I mean, that's good for us to know when we get questions or whatnot, typically complaints, but I haven't had any about voting yet. No one's said, did you ever get your drop box that you were looking to get for for the ballots?
We did. It's out affixed to the concrete out there, right outside our building, to the right of our front door. If you're looking at the building, it's in front of the handicap parking spots. And it's been there for, I guess, maybe a week and a half, going on 2 weeks now. So we empty it every day, at least. I mean, you know, sometimes twice a day. So it's averaging over 100 ballots every time we empty it.
That's great.
Are you going to be able to do, I know the governor or Secretary of State sent out something about counting the absentee ballots the day before. Have you got sufficient amount of workers and people to help with that?
I'm working out the logistics. That'll probably be a weekend project, to be very honest with you. What they've done, the state election board has made an emergency ruling that allows us to start opening ballots actually the Monday week before election day. And there's certain rules in terms of making sure that the people are involved, just like they always were. You know, you're not talking about what you see. And again, anyone that's ever helped open ballots, once you get started with the process, you're really not paying any attention to what's marked on there. You're following the process, you're counting, you're balancing, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But ultimately, the idea being that we can open ballots, we can process them to the extent of making sure we balance, have all of our stacks, but we can't actually tabulate those votes until election day, which is as it should be, because you don't want any numbers and figures getting out ahead of time. Now, I'll be very honest, it's a wonderful thing because of the volume that we have. We've issued, I don't know that we'll reach 37,000 a day, but I think we'll be close. We've issued over 36,000 so far, absentee ballots. We've checked in voted ones over 10,000. We have more. You know, we've got the mail from the last few days. We have to check signatures and process. It takes a while. But so we've gotten back, you know, approximately a third. So I would definitely entertain, and I'm hoping that I can arrange it so that we can start that process early. But what you have to keep in mind for us is during that time, advanced voting is still going on. The weekend prior to an election day, we're working all weekend. And this time it's a new variable because we've got the new equipment, which we have never used on election day yet. And from what I've been told from other counties who used it during the pilot session, which is as you would expect, it takes longer. Number one, it's new for us, so you've got to get into a system, but in general, the process takes longer. So, and as it is, I have the building, I've got it in quadrants. You kind of stay in your quadrant. We've been working that way for what, 8 weeks now. I've got different people in different areas and trying to limit their interaction. So I'm gonna have to do some, we play Tetris every day. We move equipment to be able to work here and we move it back. So we're gonna have to do that for sure to open any ballots. But that's the idea and the goal and the plan. And I'll certainly communicate that to the parties, to you guys, to the media, once we decide for sure how we will implement that.
I mean, no one's been affected any more than your office has. I mean, that's a lot.
I agree. I agree.
It is.
I don't, wildest dreams or nightmares, you could never imagine. I mean, and it's all working, it's all okay, and it's cool. And this is what we do. I mean, we take pride in what we do, but it has been something else, I must say. Yes.
I think Barb went to a psychic and then decided it was time to leave. She saw this was coming.
Apparently so. And I've done something wrong, apparently.
I think we've got the right person in charge for this. And yeah, I drove by the other day and I saw on the weekend and I saw the Dropbox. So that's great. Appreciate what you're doing there. And obviously let us know if you need more resources as you get into this. We've provided some, but if you need more, then we'll look at what we can do to get more people out there to help you.
I will definitely be. And honestly, again, that was I have my different things that have to happen today and then my things that can happen on the weekend. And that was definitely one of my weekend things, because I'll be very honest. I mean, we're okay with poll workers. We're good. We've got several poll workers who I fully am aware we're waiting till we got going a little bit to see how things went before they would commit one way or the other to working. We understood that. But by the time election day rolls around, advanced voting, we're good. No worries. I've got 9 people assigned every day because I have to be careful too, because I can't have too many poll workers because then I'm already kind of filled up my area. But when it comes to election day, staffing 20 places plus our location for whatever part of absentee that we're doing, I'll be very honest, I'm going to be reaching out on that. But I need to do more numbers to figure out where we're going to be. But I think I will need some supplemental help. Just traffic control, people control, telling you where to stand in line, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I thank you guys for the help that we have had. The folks that we've had working with us from other departments have been invaluable. From taping and cutting to sorting to scanning, it's all important and it's been awesome.
Good. I wonder if the sheriff's office might have any extra employees if we get down to it. if the schools aren't going and they've had those SROs that have been extra, just a thought.
Okay. I can
Also,
reach on
do
that.
y'all give gloves? Do you give gloves for voters?
We are not giving gloves to voters. All of our poll workers have been allotted gloves if they choose to wear them. And it kind of depends on what position you're holding. If you're just the line manager at the front, you're not necessarily taking paperwork. We're not mandating that you wear gloves. That's still your choice. But they're given gloves, they're given masks and face shields for those that choose to wear them, again, based on what position they're filling. And we've got hand sanitizer at basically every station around the room. And like I said, they're cleaning. I mean, I told them after day one, I'm like, you guys have done an awesome job. And I said, you've got to be exhausted because just the cleaning and managing that after every voter and sanitizing, I mean, they're doing a great job, but it's a lot of work.
Would you have to clean it as much if every voter wore gloves?
You really would. I think so, because my thing is, I don't know where those gloves have been. So.
And they touch their
know.
face and the glove is contaminated.
Right.
That's why a lot of people, you're better off using hand sanitizer than gloves because gloves aren't necessarily clean.
Correct. But I will say this, I mean, I'm in my office right now, but I coordinated myself over in the boardroom earlier weeks ago. And then I've moved into the other room and I have like a little window where I can look out into the polling room just so I could kind of watch the flow and see how things were going. And the majority of voters that are coming through have masks on. Some of them are wearing gloves, which is cool. We certainly supportive of that. But so that's very much commonplace for the voters that are coming through.
I don't have any questions. I'm good.
I'm good too.
Again, thanks for your leadership, Mandy.
Thank you very much. It'll be interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I think we covered the ones that you agreed we covered today, and we'll queue up people for Dave. What's the next meeting? Was that Tuesday?
Right. We'll take what's remaining in this agenda from general government and fire and move it over to Tuesday at 9 o'clock. We'll also end up picking back up those who are off. We'll get Steve's airings, 3 budgets, and Avery's 2 budgets.
Okay.
You'll send out the agenda. So we have that.
Right.
Great. Thank you
We'll
very much.
post that and everything.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
have a great day.